Good evening and welcome to the third in our Ask an Expert series. This time around we're focusing on management consultancy. If you have a penchant for problem solving, a talent for troubleshooting, or a flair for influencing, this just might be the career for you. Or for those of you unsure about what life as a management consultant might entail, you're in luck. We have a fantastic panel of Latimerians with us tonight who are going to share their stories and experiences of working in this exciting and very varied industry. Before we start, I want to give you a little bit of information on the Ask an Expert series. We launched this programme of events initially with our young Latimerians in mind, although of course many people are changing professions later in life too. So whether you're right at the beginning of your career journey or more established, we hope you'll use this session to ask the panel any burning questions you may have. This evening is all about gleaning as much information as you can from those in the know. And it's a really relaxed and informal environment. We like to say that the Ask an Expert vibe is more common room than boardroom, so please don't stand on ceremony. So the session tonight will fall into two parts. The first will be a panel discussion on the different aspects of management consultancy, and we'd ask you to keep yourselves on mute for this part of the session, but do jot down any questions you have for the panel in the chat facility and we'll raise them in the Q&A. In the second part, the panel will answer the questions some of you have already submitted, as well as those in the chat facility, or at least as many as time allows. And along the way, we'll be posing a few questions in our Slido poll. This is a first for this series, but it'll give the panel a clearer idea of which areas of the industry to focus on. So please do make sure you have your phone, your mobile phone, near to hand. Finally, I want to introduce our chair for this evening, Anna Sheriff, a Latimerian from the class of 2006. Anna spent over a decade, I think, working in management consultancy across the private, public and third sector. First for Deloitte and currently for the award-winning digital and business transformation consultancy Gate One. Welcome and thank you, Anna, and thank you for keeping us all in line this evening. So I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Sian. Thank you for that introduction. Just like to say that I'm really thrilled to be here this evening and have a fantastic panel that I'll introduce to you in a moment. In preparation for this evening, I was reflecting on a comment that I put, a rather naive comment in response to a question in the Latimer yearbook before I left, which was, where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? And I think I said, I'll either have committed to drama and be treading the boards, or I'll be an international businesswoman flying around the world. Slightly naive answer, I think, at the time. I wouldn't say it's a loss for the theatre industry, so you're not missing out on anything there. And actually, I've been hugely motivated by a really challenging and fulfilling career so far in consulting. So yeah, absolutely thrilled to be here and looking forward to sharing my experiences, and I hope that they're helpful to you. And this is about you, and we really want to make sure that we answer the questions that are going to help you in whichever decisions or explorations you're looking to make. So without further ado, I'll introduce my panel. So Emily, I'd like you to go first, please, and my questions so that we can get to know you a bit. Your current role and why you wanted to be part of the panel today, and also we'd like to know what was your favourite extracurricular activity whilst you're at Latimer, and do you still do it?
Sure. Hi, thanks. Hi everyone, I'm Emily. I'm a business analyst at McKinsey. I'm in my first year, and I'm loving it so far. I came to it from a degree in Italian and Portuguese, and I don't think that's unusual. It's a very broad church. And my favorite extracurricular activity, I don't really remember I did choir, and that was great, but that was because it was great because of Henwood. But I think it was probably History of Art Society with Robert Orme, and I do still do it. I'm in the History of Art Society at McKinsey.
Fantastic, thank you, Emily. Richard, would you like to go next, and the same questions to you?
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, my name's Richard Caldy. I spent about 10 years working in government, and then joined PA Consulting, which was is a technology and consulting firm, and worked there for about 2.5 years as a director, mainly working on strategy and government contracts. I now run a barrister's chambers. And if I think about what I remember doing at Latimer, it was quite a while ago, but rowing was my big thing. Although I think I age myself by the fact that I remember rowing in wooden boats. So I think the best, or the less said about that, the better.
Thank you, Richard. You must have been very committed, because I remember the rowers getting up every morning at like 5:30 for practice.
Yeah.
And finally, Chuck, we'd love to hear from you, the same questions.
Yeah. Hi everyone, lovely to meet you all. So I work at Deloitte in finance consulting, and if I'm going to be honest, if you had asked me at school if I was going to end up at a big four consultancy firm, I probably would have laughed at you. So in terms of my route in, I did teach first. Again, I probably didn't. There was no ambition to be a teacher when I was at school, but to try and convey the point that even if you don't know what you want to do at the moment, that's okay. That would be a big message that I'm trying to get across in this. But yeah, I started my career as a teacher, and I did that for 4 years. Did an internship and landed at Deloitte, and I absolutely love it. So feel free to ask any questions you want to know a bit more about working at a big four consultancy firm.
Thank you. So as Sean said, we're going to use Slido tonight so that you can share your thoughts and engage with us before we open to Q&A at the end. So Lynn, would you like to share the Slido question that we're going to start with? And in the meantime, if you just want to grab your mobile phones and open the camera, because it uses a QR code to get you to the question. So if you scan that QR code with your phone and then open up the browser, we want to know, which 3 words do you think best describe management consultancy? And we don't know who you are, so just put in whatever you like, and it will help us to tailor our responses. Great, so we've got a few coming through there. Okay, well, it looks like there's a lot of information that we can share with you today, but we're starting from a point of view where there's a bit on the money side there. So expensive, well paid, influence, waste of money. Well, that's interesting. People are being honest, I suppose. Change management, influence, data analysis, helping organizations. Yeah, brilliant. So I think we can pick up on some of those when we get into the questions. So thank you for that first question. And if we want to move on to the next one. So just again, to help us today, we'd love to know, is there an area of management consultancy you'd like to hear more about? So this might be an area that you're thinking about applying to, or an area that you've heard of. Okay, well, that is going to be our first question. So hopefully we should answer that. So tech, okay. Typical day, yeah, we'll cover that. Sectors, financial, IT, strategy and business. Okay, thank you everyone. Thanks for taking part in that. We'll look to try and cover that as we move through, and we'll definitely have time for some more questions at the end. Okay, so our first question, and Richard, I'll ask this question to you first. Can you describe for us, in a way that your granny would understand, what management consulting is and what good it actually delivers for society?
Okay, small question. I would say that management consultancy is what happens when an organization, and that can be any organization, so government, private organization, organization in sort of the third space, needs to do something different. And organizations tend to have structures that the way that they operate day to day, but when they need to do something different, that nearly always needs more thought, more time, more hands, and that's where management consultancy comes in. So that if you need to head in a different direction, or you've got have a new challenge, you ask management consultants to come in and help you meet that challenge or head in that new direction. And that can be right at the beginning when you're thinking about, do we need to head in a different direction? That could be strategy, for example. If we decided we are, how are we going to do it? I think Chuck mentioned he's in operating models. That's how will we set ourselves up for operating differently, and then you get down to the execution of actually what are we going to do differently, and helping somebody actually work out, okay, well, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. So it tends to be management consultants come in, do a project, and then come back out again. So that's kind of the elevator pitch, I would say, in terms of what management consultancy is about.
Thank you, Richard. And I wonder for Emily and Chuck, anything to add to that, and can you characterize why it's any good for anyone?
So I actually got asked this question in my interview, and I said professional problem solving. Just if I was going to sum up in just one bang, that I think it captures it quite nicely, because all companies are trying to get from A to B, and in a lot of cases, what they're trying to do is incredibly complex. Are they trying to put in a vast new technology platform that's going to give them new data and give them insights they can't generate before, or a completely new strategy that's going to change the way that they work completely? These are not easy things to do, and are incredibly risky if you get it wrong. So coming in and really sort of facilitating and enabling them to get from A to B is a lot of what we do. And there are so many different areas of consulting. I work in finance consulting, but I've worked in, I did something called a transition lab, where you work with a CFO trying to get to a CEO, and you get them to think about the sort of things that they need to think about when moving into that role. That's still consulting. You're still helping someone get from A to B. It's so vast. If there is a problem in business that needs to be solved, then there is a consultant that does it, put it that way.
And just building on that, and this is part of, I suppose, just an opener, which is actually why do we do consulting in the first place? I wonder if you can reflect on a project or a moment so far that has made you feel proud to be a management consultant. Emily, I know you're early on in your career, but is there a moment so far that you could pick out?
Yeah, 100%. I've been so lucky with the projects I've done so far, and I was lucky enough to do one last year, which was setting up the first UK-based charity, which will be for the Black community, and it will range from educational advocacy to economic empowerment, policy advisory work. It will do so many different things, and it will be launching later on this year. And that was with a bunch of big hitter companies, and it was so exciting to work on and just see how people could capture the moment and leverage all the expertise they have and just get it over the line, get it done. So that was an amazing experience. And I think really it does show, we were working in collaboration with different industries and different kinds of people. But the thing that was so great about management consultants in that space is that we're kind of like a Swiss Army knife, in that you learn from so many different industries, from different projects, from different people. And then when you get onto a project like that, you can kind of just drop in the center and get to work in a kind of agile way. So that was really like very very powerful to like feel the impact there.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing experience, Emily. And Richard, I'm sure there are many you can draw on so far, but is there one that stands out for you?
I think for me, I did a project working for the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. And I don't know how many people are aware that we're going to have a regulator for the internet. And so government has decided that the internet needs regulation. And so having decided this, there was then a piece of work as to, okay, what are you going to do? How is it going to work? Where's it going to sit? What's it going to do? So we did a piece of work with DCMS to work out all of that with the DCMS team, which was about 25 odd civil servants, working out, okay, what do you want this to do? How do you want to do it? Where should it sit? And we produced a report, and off the back of that, they've made their decisions and decided that they're increasing the powers of Ofcom, the current sort of TV and radio regulator that only does a bit of the internet at the moment, but its powers are going to be expanded significantly as a result. And a lot of what it's going to do and how it's going to do it is off the back of the report that we did. So I think that's one of the good things about management consultancy. Nearly always you will see something from the start all the way through to the finish, and actually what you've been doing will then see the light of day, and you'll see the change that you've helped bring about. So if you like sort of taking things from sort of start to finish, it's a really good career in that respect.
Yeah, and I wonder, Chuck, in your world of finance operating model, is there a moment that stands out for you as well?
Yeah, so I had to think about, well, last year definitely. I'd say the thing that I enjoyed most about consultancy is because you're working with the client from start to finish, right? And you see the pain and the reason why they've called you in. So you understand what their issues are, and then you see it through to the end, and you see the tangible benefits of the work that you've done. And there was a project that I worked on last year, and just sort of seeing it through. And then seeing the end result, and suddenly they're getting insights that they just hadn't had before. They're getting new sort of availabilities of different tech that they didn't even know they could get. That for me is what I enjoy about the work that I do. And there is definitely a sense of achievement, because it is tough. It's a tough profession, but it's definitely rewarding in the sense that you really see the benefit if you sort of work it through to the end.
Yeah, and there's one perspective I would like to add, because I think what I would totally agree with what the kind of examples that the three of you have given about seeing something through and kind of having an impact on a change that feels important and significant. I think my reflection is that there are some other kinds of moments that I really hold on to, where I've had an impact on one client that I've worked with in their career. And I remember working with a local authority. We were working in an integrated team with the client, and we brought in one of the team managers from the contact centre, because we were doing some digital transformation with them. So we wanted to get her operational insight into why people were calling the council in the first place, and she was really close to the customer. So we brought her into the team, and she was part of this digital transformation programme. And actually, at the end of it, she had a review with her manager, and she came out of it and said it's one of the best kind of performance reviews she's ever had, because she felt so proud of the work that she'd done and all of the new skills that she developed. And I went back a year later, actually for another pitch at the client, and I walked past her desk, and she had a little picture on her desk of me and the team who'd worked with her, because that experience had meant so much to her and she'd had such a great time working with us. And so I think those moments really matter to me as well. And then just, I suppose, taking it right back to the start, I would love to know, Emily, this is, I guess, fresh for you. Why did you become a consultant, and is it what you thought it would be like?
A very recent process. When I was at uni, I thought I wanted to do banking, which, looking back on it, is hilarious. I did a summer on a trading floor, which was just like a dark time of very little sleep and soul-crushing fear of Excel. And I came out of that and was like, that was not for me. That was a terrible experience. What do I do? And I was like, okay, well, the only thing I'm interested in is film, and like, maybe I'll go into film. So that was kind of the only thing on my mind. And I was looking at people in the film industry who I was like, I'd like to be them in 20 years. I in 20 years would like to be them now, not I would like to be who they are in 20 years into their future. But they all started out in management consulting. So I was like, okay, there must be something here that is important for them in their careers. So I kind of came into it quite naively, and then going through the process, I just really fell in love with how it sounded. Like, the idea of jumping between things the whole time and building different skills was something that, like, I was just like, that's been a real problem for me, because I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I'd be good at. I feel like I enjoy a lot of different things. And then I joined, and it's nothing like what I thought it would be like. The people are just like so amazing, and really, like, every day just is such a pleasure, because the people I work with, they're just really caring and super bright, and all in different ways. And it's kind of crazy, because I think at uni you're surrounded by people who are doing the same subject as you, or in a similar period of their life to you. And in a team, when you're in consulting, you're working with someone who's been they're like 30 years into their career, and you've got someone else who's maybe 10 years into their career but is super specialized in this one area. And it just, like, it's just the people. It's such a great environment to learn in, especially as a young person.
I think that's a really important point that you've made, which is about the people, because I mean, I've worked at 2 consulting firms now, and I think it's the people that have stood out for me as well. And I wonder if ultimately that is because consulting is, the services of selling people and their insights and their interpersonal skills with businesses. And so I think, they're looking for people who are intelligent, but also, motivated and sociable, and want to work in teams, want to support and help people. So I think that pays them to be working there. It feels great to work in that kind of environment. And I think it's also a really good point you made about exploring options in your career. And I think that's certainly, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and that's kind of why I started out. And then I realized actually I could make a career of it. Chuck, I'm thinking, so you obviously moved into consulting from Teach First, so slightly different route. So why was it that you decided to do that, and then how did it compare?
Yeah, I probably had a few too many chairs thrown across the classroom, and I just decided I wanted to do a change of profession. So no, I mean, what a way to start a career at Teach First. Like, it taught me so much, honestly. Like, resilience is one. The first year is survival. But it toughens you up, and it sets a threshold, I think, for later on in your career. But my main reasons for going in was for the variety of work, the different people that you work with all the time, and what I really love about it is you are a freelancer within this bubble, is the best way that I can put it. So you exist as an employee of this company, but you get staffed on different projects. So it's all down to, like, how you want to develop your own brand. Especially in Deloitte, it's so vast. You can go wherever you want, and so the opportunities that are there within there are really quite incredible. So yeah, I'd say for anyone thinking about starting a career, definitely consider the opportunities that are available at these companies, because taking the opportunity to really learn a consulting skill set is invaluable. You can take it wherever you want, and because you're learning from the best people, like some of the best people in the industry, I really I'd highly recommend it.
Thanks, Chuck. I think we're going to go to another Slido question now. Lynn, if you want to get the screen up. So we'd love to know for this next question, and this will help us again in the next set of questions that we're coming to, what your current situation is, if you're already working in management consultancy, or actually you haven't made your career decision and you're just trying to figure out whether this is something you want to do. Okay, that's interesting. So we've got the majority of people at university or school, and then some people thinking of changing career. Some not sure if it's the right one, or maybe we can attract you to work at one of our firms. Brilliant. Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. Okay, so the next set of questions are really focused on how people make that move into consulting, and we've talked about the fact that we come from slightly different backgrounds and routes into it. So I want to just start getting quite practical for people. So Richard, can I start with you? I'd love to know what did you actually do to get started, and what advice would you have about the best route into consulting?
So my route in, I was in a bit like Chuck, I was in a different career at the time, and I'd been in government for about 10 years. And so it was really an opportunity to use the skills that I already had, but in a completely different way. And also for me, it was very much being able to build a bridge between the public sector and the private sector. So it was kind of a sort of coming in at having been in your career for a while. It was about the consultancy wanting some of the skills that I had, and kind of picking up on what other members of the panel have said about, working in teams and each team member bringing their own skills. So I was able to bring things that I'd learned going along, but equally they were going to teach me a whole new skill set as well. So I think from my perspective, it is, regardless of which level you join, there's a very much an emphasis on learning new skills, and every project you do is going to be different. And every project, even if it's got the same badge and it's pretty much the same as the last one, there'll be different people and you might be in a different team, so the dynamics will be different. So I think it very much, certainly for me, and I'm one of these people that gets bored really easily. It's one of those things where if you like change and if you like working with other people, again, going back to that, I think it's been mentioned by all the other panelists, you work in teams. It's virtually unheard of for consultants to work by themselves. Was certainly in my experience, you work in teams and you work to sort of bring different skills together to help the client. So if you like working in teams and you like working with other people, bouncing off ideas, doing different things day to day, then it's a great career. And you will always learn new things. I think that's the thing. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I only did it for about 2.5 years, but it's definitely, I remember so much from what I did and learned so much, and it's the job that I've stayed connected with more people from than any other job that I've done. And the people that I've stayed connected with have themselves gone off and done all sorts of different things as well. So suddenly you're now talking to people who you worked with as a consultant, but they're off working in the space industry, or they're working, in various different places. So in that respect, yeah, it was fantastic.
And how did you choose to go to PA? How did you make that decision?
So for me, it was personal, in the sense of I met someone from PA, and she eventually became my boss. So it was that thing of, she was doing a consultancy project in the organization I worked for. It wasn't connected to what I was doing, but we had a conversation, we were chatting, and we were just having a chat. And I said, well, I'm thinking about leaving and doing something different. And she said, well, if you are, give me a call, because we'd love to have you. And it's noticeable that when I then worked in consultancy and then worked in clients, every now and again you'd come across people where you'd have similar conversations, where they would be very involved in what you were doing and would say, I really enjoy working with you, and whatever, would consultancy be something that I should consider? And so, yeah, so that sort of taking those industry experts and bringing them into consultancy was something that was my route in, and also something I helped other people do, when I was actually in consultancy as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think regardless of whether you're an industry expert or you have some industry expertise, or you're still at university, I think there's definitely something about trying to make the most of any kind of a network that you have, and looking up different firms that you're interested in on LinkedIn and seeing if you have any connections there. And I think one of the reasons that's so important is because if you know somebody who works somewhere, it's not necessarily about having the connection means you're more likely to get a job, but you can start, I think, get a better sense of the culture of that organization. And because there are different cultures between different management consultancy firms, and I think for me it's been really important. So I think if you can find somebody and get a sense of what it's like to work there day to day, that will be really useful to you in making a decision about whether it's a good fit.
Absolutely. And I would also add, having done lots and lots of interviewing, if you ask somebody, standard interview question, what do you know about our organization, or what have you learned about our organization? If you're able to say, well, I've made contact with somebody and spoken to them about the job that they do here, and it really the elements that they do here really interest me, it just shows that you're always trying to be that person that that the interviewer takes more seriously, and that's a really, really good way of showing it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a question on the chat, which I think we can build in to this as well, which is about how easy is it to move over to consulting from another career path. So I think, Chuck, if I can ask you to pick up on that one alongside kind of your route into consulting, perhaps any other observations you've seen from colleagues who've taken different routes into consulting.
For sure. So my routine was teach first, offer bespoke internships that you can do in the summer break. So I did a 2-week internship. That basically cuts out I think it's the first interview. So you just have a partner interview for first and second interview. You have to do case study and bits like that, and for proficiency tests. So yeah, I did those and then got in that way. I'm trying to think. I'm not too sure about other people, because I joined on the grad scheme as someone who had come in from a different profession, because a big part of consultancy for me is the skill set. And if you come in sort of later, further down the line, it doesn't give you the time to build it up. So not many of the people that I joined with had come in from different professions. A lot of people that come in as experienced hires come from industry. So they'll come in from an insurance firm or a bank. So if you have those tangible skills that are relevant to finance, it's a lot easier. I don't really have much more to add to that.
No, I think I would agree. I think routes in typically are people with industry expertise that then come in to align with specific kind of industry focused teams, because different consulting firms are set up in different ways, but they often have some kind of industry alignment. So you'll have, you know, someone coming over from retail working in the retail consulting team, and maybe they'll do that because they feel like they can have more of an impact being part of a kind of highly skilled consulting team than they could internally. That might be a reason, various different factors. And I think often, you know, there are training and development opportunities in place to make sure that they have the opportunity to build up those broader skills. And it's definitely something that consulting firms look to do, because it helps them to build a network across industry and gain very kind of specific industry insights that you wouldn't necessarily have just as a consultant. I wonder, Emily, so the next question I wanted to kind of build on this. So as a kind of graduate, or yeah, actually let's position as a question for a graduate. What are the choices that you have to make in terms of where you would want to apply within your firm, and how would you kind of make that decision?
Sure. So if you're applying to McKinsey will be similar to other American strategy consulting firms. So McKinsey, BCG, Bain, Oliver Wyman, A.T. Kearney, those are kind of some of the names. You're applying to be basically like what we call an integrative consultant. So that just means you will do anything, any kind of project, any industry, any role. And that's the bulk of people at my age level. You can also apply to specialized streams, but they're it's like a couple of places every year for those. And examples of those are like, one of my friends is an oil and gas expert, which actually just means sustainability nowadays. And he was, I can't remember what you call it, but like rocks and things at uni, and that was his passion. So he had a lot of sustainability knowledge from university, and he specialized into that. And I have another friend who, I don't know how, but she knew age 22 that the thing that set her heart on fire was operations. So she's specialized as an operations person. But yeah, and I think if you're applying for the main section, like the integrative business analyst, it's basically, you could be doing anything. So that means that, yes, like you could get staffed onto a digital piece and you're a total like technophobe. But it also, once you join, you have, as Chuck was saying, you have so much control over your projects and your career. Like even at my age, I choose all of my own projects. I have total say over everything I do, which is really, really unusual for a graduate role anywhere, like in any industry. And you can then specialize. So you can join and then be like, well, the thing I only want to do is advanced analytics, big data, and I will only do that. So it's not necessarily going to shut you off from specializing once you're here, but that's like the main thing that you would apply for.
Yeah, I think that's a really helpful overview, because I think it's similar at a lot of big firms, that you have the opportunity, like, to have structured programs to move around and learn lots of different skill sets. And you might also then have the opportunity to have a more kind of specific focused program. I personally would recommend that early on in your career, you try to find a program that gives you a breadth of experience and you don't constrain yourself too much, because I had a number of friends who were really kind of dying to be in a specific area, and then, you know, the first day at Deloitte, they find out they've been put in a different team and they're devastated, and then it turns out they actually love that thing and it's unlocked a whole new kind of world for them. So I think openness and programs that enable you to explore lots of different areas are great for new graduates. And I suppose the other thing I would just say, particularly now that I've gone from working at a big firm to a small firm, is it's worth considering that there are these options of you can go and work for the big four kind of consulting firm, you could go and work for a strategy firm like McKinsey, for example, or there are also other smaller boutique or challenger consultancies, like the one that I work for that specialize in a particular area. And I think it just depends on the type of, really the culture and the sort of day-to-day experience that you're looking for. So it's worth considering those different routes. I'm conscious of time and I want to draw back to one of the questions that was asked earlier. So I wondered, Chuck, if I could ask you a question about sort of drawing back to when you were a graduate. Could you perhaps describe a typical day in the life of
yeah, so
your first year?
Yeah, I think managing expectations here. You know, if you join one of these firms, you're not going to be owning something straight away. There's a wax on, wax off process where you really have to sort of earn your stripes and get your feet under in a way that, you know, build up your skill set, and it does take time. You know, if you go in with good Excel skills, for example, great. There's an art to building a consultancy deck that I certainly didn't appreciate before I joined. And, you know, you have to sort of remember that quite often this is the first thing the client will see, regardless of what amazing data model you built or you know, how much thought has gone into it. If you're presenting one deck, that's what they're going to base all of their impressions on of everything you've done. So it does, you know, it needs to be perfect to a degree, you know. Yeah, typically you will be given tasks like come up with a creative way to interpret this data, show it on the slide, understand how you would think about structuring a deck so that we can convey a story, because storytelling into consultancy is so important. You know, if you can't capture you know, the essence of the point you're trying to get across, then it kind of all falls apart. So, you know, if you have good Excel skills, by all means. If you have, you know, data visualization skills, they're incredibly useful, and you can again sort of bring things to life in a different way. Your typical day will be focused around using those things to support a work stream to help, you know, to help get things over the line. There isn't really sort of a sugarcoating to it. You're not going to be sort of leading something, but, you know, you learn the skills that way, and you learn off amazing people in the process.
Yeah, that's a great point. You're often working as a team and you might be supporting. You might have to start at the bottom, but you can quite quickly work your way up, I think, if you prove yourself. Emily, how about you? I guess you're in it right now. So what's a typical day like for you?
So like an actual typical day, and I know that everyone says this about every single job, but no 2 days the same. That being said, I have check-in and check-out every day. Check-ins at like should be at 9 a.m. Sometimes it's been at 8, which is ungodly. And that's where you're like, okay, here are my meetings for the day. Here's what we all like. It's with your team, and you say like, here's what I want to get done, and this would be great today. This would be amazing. And then you kind of all start your day, and this is all also with the lens of this being remote. This would be in person on the client site from Monday to Thursday if it weren't like non-COVID. And then during the day, it's like a mix of meetings, building PowerPoint slides, structuring the presentation, as Chuck was saying. That's a real learned skill. Doing Excel work, and then being meetings with clients, trying to get data from clients, which it seems like is an almost never-ending task sometimes. But yeah, so you're always jumping around, you're always doing different things, and day to day it's very different. Yeah, I don't really, I think it's also just like I completely agree with Chuck in that I would not be allowed to present to my current client, the senior client, like no way. What I make gets filtered through someone else before it goes to her. That being said, you do learn by doing a lot in consulting. It's you get given sort of like breadcrumbs of, can you handle doing one slide? Okay, then can you do 5 for me? Or okay, I'll give you a little tiny bit of this model which is already done on Excel. Like next time you build your own. So you do kind of, it ramps up very, very quickly. Like, I would not believe 6 months ago that I would have built a model, and I have. So it does, yeah, it ramps up very, very fast.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something about variety and pace that's just kind of through every day. And then I think also, like, a lot, I hear what you're saying about, you know, your work is kind of quality reviewed before it goes to the client. But I think also there's a lot of things about just being thrown in at the deep end. And I remember when I started consulting, we were running these readiness workshops for the Olympics. And I saw one of my colleagues who was a year ahead of me running and facilitating these big sessions with the teams who ran venues on the Olympic Park, who managed arrivals into Heathrow. And he was leading them, and he was running sessions with them. And I was thinking, oh my God, how is he doing that? He's just a year older than me. But it's amazing how quickly you build up that confidence, and then suddenly you're doing it yourself, which is a great feeling. And on that point, I wanted to come back to something you were saying earlier, Richard, about the skills that you developed in consulting and how important they were to you. So I wonder if you can share, you know, what do you think that consulting added to your career? What skills did it help you to build?
So being a little bit higher up the organization, when I was in the office, I tended to be focused on pitching to clients. So preparing pitches and then pitching, going out and doing pitches to clients. So you learn the skills of selling, which is, and one of the key things there is actually listening. So when the client tells you, this is what I want, often you can say, oh, okay, I think I know what you want, rather than actually listening to, they've already told you what they want, and not filtering it through your own viewpoint, which is, well, no, what I think they need is this. Sometimes that works, but often you really, as I say, you really have to focus on the listening. And then, but a lot of the time I'll be out and about looking after the projects that we were doing. And when you're there, that it's about building trust with your clients. So you might check in with the team, see how they're doing, but then you're off around the client organization, and your job is often just to wander around and talk to people and talk to the clients that you know already, get them to introduce you to other people within the organization, listen to what they're doing, because ultimately what you want to try and do is to get the client to buy more work from you. But they're only going to do that if they trust you. And this goes a lot to the sort of the presentation skills, and, you know, picking up what Anna just said about her colleague, the people in the audience are only going to listen to what you're saying if they trust what's coming out of your mouth. And part of that is around your technical skills and knowing what you're talking about. But another element is also just the way that you present yourself and the way that you listen to what they're telling you and sort of synthesize all of that together. So it's kind of you're building a skill set that revolves around listening to people, being able to solve their problems, present solutions to them, but generally find ways to connect with people, which essentially is what kind of you're trying to do in a professional services environment, because otherwise you want repeat business from clients, and that's the easiest way to do it. You want the client to think, next time they've got a problem, I know, I like Anna, she was really great the last time we worked together, I'll phone her up, maybe she can help me with this. That's the way that it works. So building those relationships is a really, really big thing.
Thank you, Richard. I want to make sure that we answer some of the questions that people sent in and also that have come through on the chat. So I'll just start to cover a few of those. One of the questions is about university degrees. So Chuck, maybe I can start with you. What's your take on the degrees that are relevant, or where people come from, their backgrounds into consulting?
Yeah, so I mean, just for a bit of flavour, I studied psychology and philosophy. Another colleague who went through the Teach First route was a kindergarten teacher and studied art. There is a real diversity in what people study. I don't necessarily think it matters that much. We've got a new set of recruits in our finance team. Most of them studied economics or had some sort of economic flavour to it. But I wouldn't say if you're doing a degree that's outside an area of consultancy that you want to go into, I don't see it as a barrier. It's not. So I wouldn't worry about it. If you're going to university, do what you're passionate about, and then move into consultancy as in the area that you want.
Yeah, I'd completely agree. And I think a lot of firms actually make a point of hiring people with lots of different degree backgrounds, because you want that diversity in the team, and that adds to the work that you're doing. Emily, do you have a perspective to add on that as well?
The only thing I would say, and I saw that someone just asked, what are the most relevant A-level subjects? Like, it doesn't exist. Like, I did Brazilian film and medieval Italian poetry. Like, I didn't, like, there's no, then that will never come into my work. But equally, when you go into the interview, this might sound really corny, but I think it really, really matters for consulting, is that, like, you really need to be yourself, because these companies are just people companies. Like, their services are you, and they want to have people who are really just themselves, like 100% themselves, their own interests, their own way of working, confident, humble, like, and I think you only get to being like that by just being yourself and doing the things that really interest you and that you're passionate about. Like, the people that I work with, everyone studied different things, everyone has very different interests, but people are just really passionate about the most random things, and I think that's the most important thing. So, like, the most relevant A-level subject is whatever you like the most. The most relevant degree is whatever you like the most. It's really not a factor, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of firms will offer some sort of professional, like, qualification or training when you start. So, if there are specific skills that everybody needs to be at a baseline for, they'll help you get up to that point. I think, like, Deloitte offered SEMA, I think, as a starting point. And then one final question to ask, which is about how you all think the consulting industry is changing, and some references and questions sent into some of the unfortunate mistakes and revelations of some bad culture in some of the firms, but then also just thinking about trends in industry and the types of support that businesses need. What do you think is going to be different or exciting for people joining the industry? Richard, go for it.
The thing that you notice more and more is it's increasingly tech dominated. So being able to integrate technology. Now, often people that think you need a technical background, but that's not the case. Often it's about the fact that there's technology being brought in, and it's how the company deals with that technology, which then, if you think about companies, nearly all companies are people, and the company would decide we need to bring more technology in, and then all the people are looking around going, well, what does this mean? What do I do with it? How are we going to work, etc. And the PA, when I was there, did a study, and it was talking about the effect of AI on companies. And actually it was, there was lots of reports saying AI is going to mean we need fewer people. And it's actually, this report said that they're going to need more people, because AI will do a lot more of the work that some people will have done, but it will mean that they need an awful lot more people sitting around it to help interface with everything else that they're doing and clients and things like that. So yeah, tech is kind of more and more dominating in the effect of it, but it's still a people game. I think that's the most interesting thing, that no matter what's going on, consultancy, and I think it's been mentioned several times, it's all about people. Firms are still dominated by people working in them, and where there are people, there's nearly always going to need to be consultancy. So I don't things may change and themes may change, but I think the core of it is still going to remain the same going forward.
That's a fabulous answer, Richard. Thank you. And I suppose for Chuck and Emily, anything that you would add in terms of how you see the kind of the work-life balance of consulting, or the culture of consulting changing perhaps as a result of COVID and the way that we've been working?
Yeah, I think now people are much more understanding of well-being in every way. I think working from home and kind of seeing people's lives and having conversations with your colleagues where you're like, I'm not feeling well today, I'm not feeling great, I haven't left my house, or, you know, I haven't left my neighborhood in weeks and I just really need a walk right now. Like, I'm hoping that conversations like that are just so normalized now, and we're so kind of in touch with our well-being that will be that will continue. I also think more broadly, like, a lot of the negative press about consulting is honestly like appalling to a lot of the people that I work with as well. And I think with that, and with issues around like lifestyle and kind of broader cultural things, troubles, challenges, like the thing that is so exciting for me is like Gen Z, because the chaotic good energy that Gen Z brings to the workplace is like really, really powerful. And I think like it is changed from the ground up at a lot of places. It's people who you know, aren't willing to settle anymore for not being able to get enough sleep or see their friends, or just like not seeing their values reflected in the work that people do. So I think it's also like the next generation will really, really change a lot of the face of the industry, which is really great.
Yes, I hope so. And I think I'm seeing that as well, a huge amount around diversity and inclusion and creating more flexible working, so that lots more people can stay working and consulting and be happy. Chuck, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I'm having a few technical issues. No, not really. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, it surprised me a bit going into Big Four, because I thought the culture would be different. But you know, the people are really lovely. Everyone is really understanding, and you know, there's a massive agenda, a well-being agenda that you know I think is needed. So you know, I don't really have anything to add to what's been said. Yeah, I think the points are all fair.
Brilliant. Well, I would just like to say before I hand back to Sean that it's been really great to meet the three of you, and I've really enjoyed speaking with you tonight. So thanks for answering all my questions. And to the audience, I hope that that's been useful to you. I hope that we've covered all the areas that will help you make any decisions that you're looking to make in the future.
Thank you, Anna, and all of our panel. That was really fantastic, and I've now got such a really clear insight into what sounds like a fantastic career. I just wish I was 30 years younger, but still. And thank you for the audience questions. They were great. So if you'd like to join the next Ask an Expert, which is on digital giants, that's, you know, if you'd like to work for Amazon or Google or Apple, those kind of organizations, it's on Thursday, the 6th of May. So I think my colleague Rihanna is putting the link to that and to our virtually speaking talks, which you're welcome to join. So do stay in touch, and we hope to see you for the next Ask an Expert or earlier at one of the other events. Just one last thank you to our panel. Fantastic, really, really good, informative and enlightening talk. Thank you very much. Good night.